Welcome back to Just About Hoops podcast. As you can see, we got the new mic setups. Looking a little bit more official today, you know what I'm saying? But welcome back to the pod, man. This is going to be episode number 7 of the Senior Project series. I'm really excited to get the audio and the visuals for the podcast. And this is how it's going to be from now on. You know, we're going to have the mic setup. We're going to have everything like that. You know, trying to maintain a certain level of professionalism with the pod. You know, a mix of that and a mix of just, you know, some laid back, casual, just conversations, man. We're going to have some more guests throughout the process. But without further ado, we got our first guest on the podcast. A man who really doesn't need any introduction. The man of the hour, Mr. David Hafernik here. Just happens to be my father as well. But, you know, that's not really that important, I don't think.
Glad to be with you in studio today.
I'd be with me in studio. Hey, man, it's nice to have you, man. Thanks for joining the pod. Appreciate you coming on the show,
Nice
man.
to be here, man.
Nice
Excited about this.
I gotta ask you, though, what's with the hat? I'm digging the hat, man.
Well, the back looks pretty good.
That looks pretty, that's what I'm saying. That's what I noticed first.
But if you turn it around, it's looking a little better.
That's looking pretty sharp, man. Hey, where'd you get that hat?
You know, it's some new merch that's not available to the public just
Not
yet,
available yet.
but very possibly very soon.
When's it dropping?
Could be in the next couple of weeks.
Could be in the next couple weeks, man. Hey,
So,
man.
you know, get your orders in now.
Hey, I'm
but-
messing with the logo, man. I'm messing with the logo.
But thinking
Heavy.
it's looking pretty clean.
The black on purple, we got that little Kobe Mamba shade. You know
There
what I'm
you
saying?
go. Yeah, I think it's rocking it.
Man, I love it, man.
It's looking good. I'm digging the hat,
Hey,
digging the logo, digging the hat.
that's what we like to see, man. Hey, but we gonna hop into it. You know, get you started with some questions. You know, get the pod going, get the conversation going. You know, keep everything flowing.
There you go.
So let's just get started, man. So obviously you've been a basketball fan for a long time.
Been following the Spurs since I was a little
We won't
kid.
bring up the age. We don't do that on the pod. You know what I'm saying?
Goes back a few years.
Yeah, we're not.
A few.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that. For sake of conversation.
There
right?
you go.
All right, let's do that. Yeah, man. But you know, you've been watching basketball your whole life. Let's kind of dive into that. What would you say is like your earliest memory of basketball? Like the first, and I understand like growing up as a kid, basketball probably wasn't as popular as sports as like baseball, football.
Well, I mean, back then, and you also have to realize, since I'm older than dirt, back then, I mean, TV was 3 channels.
Right.
No cable, no internet, no, you know, you could only really watch what was on network television.
Exactly, right.
And you could follow the Spurs, but it was tended to be, you read about it the next day in the newspaper, right?
Newspaper.
If they were out of town playing, you didn't get the game on TV, you were reading about it the next morning.
You gotta read about it in the Express News.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was in some ways harder to follow basketball back then,
Right.
because it just wasn't so readily available.
Exactly.
Now you get every game on your phone, on your laptop, on the TV instantly.
Right.
You know, you get it live every game.
Right.
So back then you had to make a little more effort to follow basketball.
Exactly.
Because there again, not a lot of games were televised. There wasn't a lot of nationally televised games 3 nights a week like you have them now.
Exactly.
You know, where you have it on ESPN or TNT or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a little effort, but we still followed it. I mean, I remember watching, you know, back originally the ABA days. You know, George Gervin.
Jackie Moon.
Yeah, you know, you had.
You traded for a refrigerator. You know what I'm
There
saying?
you go. You know, refrigerator and $20 and you got them. But you know, the old Gervin days, the finger rolls, being able to watch him play
Right.
was just amazing, because even back then he was doing stuff nobody else was doing. You know, he invented a shot that didn't exist before he started playing, the finger roll.
And it's crazy how he passes that on to future generations. You know, one of my earliest memories of basketball, sort of to piggyback off of your earliest memory, was I attended a Spurs camp at it's now the Frostbank Center. It used to be the AT&T Center.
Yeah.
But when I was like 5-6 years old, I attended a basketball camp there, and it was led by George Gervin, and he was the first sort of coach who actually mentored me on how to properly make a reverse layup. And I just remember him teaching me that, him showing me how to spin the ball off the glass, and he kind of showboated a little bit, as he does, as the Iceman
Imagine
does.
that.
He's got the stature, he's got the car, he can do it.
You
sat
can't
there
hold that against him.
I think he sat there and made around 50, 60 layups, just spinning it every which way, shooting over the backboard, just doing everything he can to just show us that, even as an undersized guard, even as I think I was probably 4'5" at the time, one of the smallest kids there. But, he was just showing us that, as an undersized guard, as any player, if you can get that touch off the glass, if you can sort of perfect finishing around the rim, especially with the finger roll, because it's so nice, especially the way guys like Steph Curry do it now in the contemporary NBA, where they just kind of float it up, 3, 4, 5, 6 feet in the air, and it just kind of drops in like a perfect little raindrop.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool that you remember George Gervin.
Yeah, because it all started with Gervin.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I think to the detriment of today's NBA fans,
right?
Especially the younger fans, the 35 and younger fans, they don't remember those old days.
Right.
They don't remember, that until there was Gervin, there was no finger roll.
Right.
And so it's kind of cool to see how that's kind of morphed and grown into what every decent guard today can do a finger roll.
Exactly.
If you don't have a finger roll, you ain't going to be a guard on an NBA team.
You're on the bench.
If that, you're probably the towel boy. You got to be able to do those kind of things now. But back then it was, it changed the game to a certain point.
Right.
It's kind of like, I look at the finger roll. I look at Manu Ginobili in the Euro step, who really brought that to the NBA.
Man, he really pioneered that, and then James Harden revolutionized it.
Yeah, and you had the sky, Kareem and the sky hook, and you had some of those shots that defined the NBA.
Right.
And
changed the game.
They literally changed the game.
Right.
And I think as the game has grown so, and the talent level has just exploded. You look at the talent in the 70s and 80s, nothing against those players. They were outstanding. Don't get me wrong. But you look at the talent level today, and it's exponentially better.
And on an international scale.
And now, exactly. It's an international game now. You're scouting and drawing players from literally every country in the world today. Everybody gets scouted if you're any good. Starting in high school,
Right.
And so it's grown so big that it's easy to kind of forget those guys that really helped establish the modern game of basketball.
Right.
Because you go back to the 50s and 60s, it was a very different game. Yes, it was played with a ball and a hoop, but that's about the extent of how it was similar.
Right. Yeah.
There was coaches saying you pass the ball 3 times and you shoot.
Yeah.
Fundamentals. Wilt Chamberlain was said, don't jump when you're trying to block a pass, because when you jump, you can't move.
Yeah.
So if you get off your feet, you're losing your man. You can't defend him.
Yeah.
So don't jump. And how would that play today? The game's changed.
A lot of versatility now.
Yeah.
Positionless league, that's where it's transitioning to.
It really is. It's becoming more and more positionless just by the season now. It really is. And it's kind of cool to see those progressions.
Exactly.
And like I said, the level of talent, almost anybody today can score 25, 30 points given the opportunity.
Yeah, man.
If you're a starting player in the NBA and you're not occasionally going off for 30 points.
You can be in the G League, you can go off for that.
Right.
It's a lot of talent now.
Because I said, back in the day, you were drawing from U.S. colleges. And most of those players were playing 3 to 4 years in college.
Basically a college draft. They weren't tapping into that.
Right. It was strictly a college draft.
Right.
And like I said, most of those players were going 3-4 years in college.
Yep.
They were coming out at 21, 22, 23.
Yep.
They weren't coming out at 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, there weren't many developmental prospects. It was all, what's your floor? How can you help this team win now?
Right. And there still is a very much of a focus, I think, on winning now for a lot of players. Teams want to win now.
Well, for contenders, when we're talking about the draft, a lot of guys are getting drafted now for upside. They're 18, 19 years old, coming out of college, coming out of
coming out of 1 year of
coming out
college.
International League, and then you look at leagues like the G League Ignite based in Las Vegas, where guys are skipping college, coming straight out of high school, going to the teams like G League Ignite, where they're already playing against former NBA champions, NBA talent,
right?
Trying to prepare themselves for that. We saw with Jalen Green, we saw with Jonathan Kuminga, Dyson Daniels,
and you also see
most recently with Scoot Henderson,
then you also see the international players. Victor Wembanyama, got a shout out to my boy Victor.
Of course, man.
He's been playing professionally for 2 years, 3 years in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, at like 16
old, yeah.
Well, Tony Parker was doing the same thing in France. When he came in, he started playing pro, and if it was either 16 or 17, played a couple of years of pro.
Right.
And back even 10 or 15 years ago, you just didn't have that.
Yeah, right. No,
and now, I said that level of talent and the availability of talent is just, I mean, it's astronomical compared to what it was 15, 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Where you just didn't have that kind of thing then. And now, the competition for a slot on that team is so much more competitive than it was just 10, 15, 20 years ago. So the talent's going up, the pool's getting bigger, but it makes for great basketball.
Right.
I mean,
it does.
Literally almost any team can beat any team on any given night.
Exactly.
More so now than it was there again 10 or 15, 20 years ago, where if you were kind of the bottom of the league, you weren't winning nothing. Now, just tonight, the Spurs, short of a lousy turnover in the last 10 seconds, could have won the game tonight.
Against the Kings,
against the Kings, which are a solid team. And the Spurs,
shout out to Bucks and Fox, they've been balling out.
Without Victor, just damn near won the game.
Yeah.
And the Spurs are not a good team this season. They're building for next season and the future.
We're looking towards the future, man.
Absolutely.
We're probably gonna have a top 3, top 4 pick this year.
We'll have a top 3 or 4 pick almost assuredly this year. Add to Victor, build around him, and the future looks damn bright.
It does, man. Hey, put on for the city. Let's kind of transition from that. So obviously you've lived in San Antonio for most of your life. I know you lived in Atlanta for some time.
Lived in Atlanta a little bit. Lived in Austin a little bit.
Right. You've been around. You've been around the block a couple times. But,
probably 4 or 5, 6, 9 times around.
But San Antonio has kind of dominated your residency.
Absolutely. I've always considered myself a San Antonian.
Right.
San Antonio's always been home.
It's how the Americas.
And will always be home.
At the Riverwalk.
Absolutely.
Damn good Mexican food.
The best Tex-Mex in the country. I'm sorry, there's nowhere else to go for good tacos.
Mouth is water. Anyways, stemming from that, the Spurs are the heart and soul of the city. And this city lives and breathes the Spurs. It's basically the heartbeat of San Antonio.
Yes.
You go downtown. Every other sidewalk, every other block. There's a mural of either the big three. I'm talking Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, or now with the recently acquired Victor Wembanyama. He's obviously amassed a lot of attention, garnered a lot of support, and really galvanized fans to really show off for the team, support the Spurs, and support everything. That's involved with us, whether that be merchandise sales, ticket sales, everything, just keeping the economy of San Antonio going.
Absolutely. San Antonio, to a certain point, with the Spurs, is lucky in that they're our only pro team.
Right.
We don't have a pro MLB team. We don't have a pro football team.
Roger Goodell?
Yeah. Hey. We've got a soccer team. I don't understand how the soccer rankings work, but it's not a top tier soccer team.
It's like AAA.
It's like it's like AAA, double AAA kind of stuff. AAA, yeah. So the Spurs are lucky in a sense that they are the sports focus for us in San Antonio.
Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of people here they might follow the Cowboys or the Texans or whoever.
Hey, shout out to the Brahmas though.
And the Brahmas.
Shout out to the Brahmas.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Brahmas. We ain't hating on the pod. We shout out the Brahmas.
But
they've been here for long, but they're here to stay.
So in a lot of ways, the Spurs are kind of lucky to a point,
right?
In that they can be the sports focal point for us.
Exactly.
In San Antonio.
Yeah, everybody and their mama got a Wemby jersey.
Yeah, I think I just saw the other day that he's crossed, that Victor has surpassed 1 billion views on social media.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah, they promote the hell out of him, man. Him and
I think he might have the most this season, the most social media views of any player in the NBA.
Oh, for sure. Sure.
I mean, he's surpassed LeBron. Everybody, he's. I truly believe within the next 2 years, maybe 3, he will be the face of the NBA.
Yeah.
Because he has, for one, everybody that's met him has said that he's just a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's not stuck up. He's not egotistical. He just wants to sit down and talk with people. He's just a nice guy, very grounded, great sense of humor. He has the international draw coming from France.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all friends supporting him, man.
Yeah.
And he's aesthetic, too.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, like, from what I've heard, like, he shuts his phone off at, like, 9:30, limits his applications, which, it might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but, for a lot of players, they just don't have that dedication.
Yeah.
And that really does give me, that sort of emulation of the Mamba mentality.
Absolutely.
Bryant,
and
Jim Rat.
You're
never going to beat him in the gym.
He works out all day, every day.
Exactly, man.
Like I said, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't, goes to bed at 9. Well, I think he starts reading at 9 o'clock till about 10 o'clock and goes to bed. He's a very regimented guy.
Shout out the 90s Bulls. They were doing that.
He's doing everything right so far.
Right. Yeah.
And I can really see him. People go, "Oh no, it's going to be Durant. Durant's too old. Sorry, he's not going to be the face of the NBA."
35.
Yeah, but
let's be honest.
But he's reaching the end of he's getting toward the end of his career.
He's going to be the face of retirement soon.
Well, exactly. But Victor being, he just turned 20 in January.
Him and Tom Brady are going to be out there.
Yeah, they'll be hitting
Cancun,
hitting the early bird special for dinners at 4:30.
Get them a tea time.
But as good as he is, as nice as he is, as unusual a player as he is.
Right. He's an alien, man.
He truly is.
I mean, 7'5" in shoes is crazy.
Well, 7'5" and can literally play point guard.
He's a point forward center.
Yeah.
/ coach / GM.
He's I think he's going to be the face of the NBA within the next couple of years.
Oh, for sure.
Give him a year or two to kind of get some traction and let people truly see him. And he's going to be the face of the NBA.
Yeah, man.
I don't think there's any way around it.
Yeah, we're talking faces of the league. We're talking Wembanyama, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
Giannis is still doing his thing. He's going to be face of the league for a while. Same with Jokic and Embiid. But I like to shout out the young guys, man. I mean, SGA and Anthony Edwards, they're two of my guys that are just, I think they're going to just run this league. Same with Luka, same with Tyrese Halliburton.
Because a lot of the old standards are starting to get older. KD, he's what, 35?
Yeah, the older stars are reaching their peaks, but the younger stars, they're just, some of them are polarizing because of that generational gap. Where older generations, they don't know, they're not accustomed, they're not acclimated to that style of play of basketball. They're more, they're fundamentalists at heart, and it's sort of innate within their nature. So that those values are embedded in them. So when they see the young guys with all the swag, all the showboating, all that stuff, which stems from a lot, the club basketball scene in high school. It stems from college. It's just part of the game now.
Yeah.
But a lot of the young stars, they're doing their thing, man. And,
I think they're going to kind of start taking over the league a little bit.
And when we talk about influence, right, we're not just talking about basketball. We're talking about fashion. We're talking about social media trends. We're talking about just popular culture in general,
Because all that has an effect now.
Right.
20 years ago, that had no effect, no impact.
And it really influences the kids, man. That's the big thing. And that's why, when we talk about, like load management and stuff like that. I look at players like Mikal Bridges. Recently he just surpassed 483 games in a row played. That's stemming from college at Villanova, to his time with the Suns, to his time with the now Brooklyn Nets. I look at players like that, and those guys are really putting on for the younger generation, showing them, how the game should be played, how there really should be a perpetuated narrative of availability. And
you're not helping your team if you can't play.
No, the best gift you can give to an organization is availability, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, you will be monetarily rewarded for that. We saw Jaylen Brown sign a contract north of $300 million this past offseason. It's just crazy, man.
Yeah.
Halliburton got $250 million. Even Bradley Beal, who's mostly been injured the past 2 years, he still got north of $200 million.
Right.
So we're looking at these lucrative contracts, and these guys, they have influence over the kids. They have influence in popular culture, but they also have influence over organizations now. So that's something I kind of want to transition into. That is
because all that influence translates to money.
Yeah, and that's why I want to transition into player empowerment right now. I want to know your thoughts on that. Obviously, growing up as a basketball fan, in an earlier era, we didn't see as much of that. We saw, the NBA was sort of perceived as like more of a job. Like, you got to show up. If you're under contract, you got to abide by that contract. You have to stay true to that contract. And so I just want to know, what's your opinion on players sort of, signing these massive contracts, but then also, having a lot of leverage over organizations, requesting trades. I kind of want to know what you want to think about that and sort of that ecosystem that it creates, and sort of, do you think that that's beneficial to the game, or do you think that it's either a hindrance or like?
Boy, I think it's a real double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword.
Because
let's dive into that.
Yeah, it's nice that it's more and more a player-driven league.
Right. I mean, they bring the money.
Right, and so there's a lot of good with that. Mm. But I also see where you have players that are truly dictating what a team does.
Right.
To the point of, why is there even a GM?
Exactly.
Why is there even a coach?
Yeah.
Because the player says, I want to get this guy to play on the team with us next season.
Or I want to go to this team.
Or I want to go to this team. Make it happen.
We saw with Beal, we saw with Lillard this past offseason, wanting to go to the Heat.
LeBron's done it a couple of times, where, no, I'm going over there to play. And while I can appreciate that, yeah, it's a player-driven league, but I think if we're not careful, the players can have too much influence.
Right.
Because most players, with the amount of money involved in today's game.
Crazy, man.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
My kid's going to play in the NBA. That's one thing I'm going to tell you. I need that NBA money.
Where you see players, they're looking out for number one.
Right. Yeah.
I want to win a ring, but, if I can't win a ring, that $60 million contract looks pretty good.
Right.
And if I get this endorsement deal and that endorsement deal, my grandkids are rich, and I've never won a chip.
Shoot, man, yep.
Because there's so much money.
There really is. There's a lot of money going around.
I honestly think it's getting to the point where there's too much money involved.
Well,
look at going to a Spurs game.
But they're bringing, the thing is, the league is revenue share, right? Like, the league is bringing in so much money, and my hope.
But what does it cost a family of four to go to a ball game now?
I mean, but it's not all coming from ticket sales. It's not.
But ticket sales are going up and up, or the price of tickets are going up and up and up. You can't go to a Spurs. You get the last row nosebleed seats are $75, $80.
But it's because the NBA has become like an international staple. Like, that's why the prices. I mean, for one, everything's going up, right? But but especially for the NBA, like, it's such a global phenomenon now that when you look at the revenue share, like, I would rather the players get a bigger percentage of the money than the front office, the GMs, because ultimately, those guys are great, right? They're responsible for roster construction, manufacturing a competent team. But a lot of these guys, they have a sort of parasitic mentality, right? Where, and obviously, like, when money's involved, you're going to commodify players. At the end of the day, you're going to kind of be subjected to seeing them as a price tag, seeing them as a contract, seeing them as a contributor to your team, and not necessarily a human being, right?
Right.
And it goes both ways.
It's a commodity.
It goes both ways.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is that, yes, these guys are making a lot of money. Yes, it's, north of $250, $300 million. But again...
Bordering on obscene.
But again, like, with the amount of money that's coming in, like, I would rather them have the money in their pockets than, the guys in the front office. Because ultimately, the players are what drive the league, man. Absolutely.
I mean, and it's like a lot of things. They're the ones essentially generating the money.
Right.
Well... Look at in San Antonio. Look at the Spurs revenue last season, and look at the revenue this season with Victor. Ticket prices went up.
Yeah.
Ticket sales went up.
It's a hotter game, man, and
they're selling jerseys and they're selling
man.
merchandise left and right now for the Spurs.
I got my Wemby jersey at home in the closet, man.
His financial impact, even before he had played one game.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I think they said in 3 years he'll have like a $5 billion impact in San Antonio.
Oh, for sure. Easy.
It's massive. And so, and that's all him.
And that's what
that's nothing that the front office is doing, the GM's not doing, the coach isn't doing. That's Victor's impact. That's him specifically, his impact. Right. And it's multiple billions of dollar impact.
And that's
people traveling to San Antonio and staying in hotels, eating at restaurants before and after the games, all that kind of stuff. The financial impact of being a competitive team. Or having that player on the team.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't go that far, buddy, but yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's coming, but it's.
I saw them get blown up by 40 on New Year's Eve, man. I want my money back.
Yeah, really.
Give me my money back, man.
But it's.
Dominic Barlow threw a shot off the side of the backboard. Hey, shout out Dom. Shout out. We love Dom, man. The first player out of Overtime Elite to make it on an NBA roster. We got to shout out my boy Dom. But
yeah,
come on, bro. That was.
It was sad.
That was crazy.
It was a little sad.
And it wasn't just him. It was the whole team.
Yeah, I mean, this season has been an interesting season because they've literally, I think until January anyway, they were trying to figure out how the hell do you play Victor?
Right.
What position do you play him at? Do you play him as a power forward? Do you play him as a center? How do you play him?
And it was all observational. I mean...
Right. And no one knew that until they just went through 25, 30 games or whatever to go, well, let's try him over here a little bit. No, that didn't really work. Let's try Sohan playing as a point guard with him and see how that changes things. Well, that didn't really work.
Shoot, man, yeah.
And it's all been kind of...
Back to the drawing board after that one. Yep.
Yeah. But it's been kind of tweaking things. And in the last, toward the middle to end of January... through February, you started seeing the Spurs be, I think, much more competitive. They're not getting blown out by 40 much.
No.
They're not winning a whole lot more, but they're certainly much more competitive.
Oh, for sure.
Tonight
definitely.
Tonight they lost by 2 points.
Yeah, 131-129.
And so they're figuring some of that stuff out.
Oh, definitely.
And if you look at their roster, other than Victor, maybe...
Definitely. I'm gonna say
Devin.
Untouchables, man. I'm saying Victor, Devin Vassell, definitely Sohan, Trey Jones. I would even say guys like Champagnie, definitely untouchable because he's obviously having a down year, but
Champagnie's not bad, but he probably shouldn't be starting.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, he's a guy that you want to keep on the roster, though.
He might be a good guy coming off the bench.
And I'm a Zach Collins supporter, so I think because you gotta look at these contracts. Like we're not. We had a lot of money to spend this offseason. We had a lot of cap space. We didn't really use it. We're gonna have a lot this upcoming.
We're gonna have a lot this offseason.
Yeah. So when I'm looking at the allocation of our funds right now, I don't think any of it is misallocated. Because we haven't invested in a lot of guys. I mean, we gave Keldon Johnson an extension that was warranted. He was playing extremely well for the past 2 seasons. Sort of had a down year, but also his
role has changed.
There's been a lot of
volatility. He's coming off the bench. He's basically the 6th man now.
Yeah, and I don't think he should be. I personally think, it might be in our best interest to trade him. Because I think that Keldon Johnson is a starter in this league, and I think that bringing him off the bench in a 6-man role, doesn't do him his due justice as a player. I think he's too talented for that. I think he could provide another organization, a contender with, a lot more.
Well, I think for the Spurs, he's
doing here.
He's one of the players that has some real trade capital. You can get something for him.
Yeah.
Champagnie, probably not a lot. You got a lot of the other guys. Trey Jones, not a bad point guard, but not a championship caliber point guard.
Well, but it's not about their.
He's probably good coming off the bench as a backup.
It's not about their talent. It's about the contracts, right? Because their contracts aren't large enough that we would have to aggregate them to get any sort of trade to materialize. Now, if you aggregate 2 or 3 of those contracts, we have a treasure trove of draft picks.
Oh yeah.
If we're looking to bring in anyone, we could do it. We have the assets.
We can. Anybody that's available for the most part, we can afford to get them.
Yeah,
if we
we're
want.
not a contender, so we're not looking at our players from an individualistic standpoint, saying, what can this guy bring to our organization if we were to move on from him? We're looking at which contracts can we aggregate and how many draft picks do we need to include to bring in a player of this caliber?
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about, players being, commodified, because, when you're in that sort of situation, you're not looking at a player as a player, you're looking at them as a contract.
Right.
Especially when you're aggregating salaries.
Well, these days with free agency and everything else, to a great degree, players have become commodities because they sign that 3, 4, 5 year contract. Half of them will never finish that contract. Yep. They'll either demand a trade, the team will trade them. The contract is almost insignificant.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't lock them into a team anymore like it did years ago with all of the flexibility now of being able to swap players around so much. That's changed the game a bunch.
Yeah, but I mean, I think in the current landscape of the NBA, when we talk about the recent collective bargaining agreement, the new CBA, and we look at sort of the terms and conditions of that, we look at the second apron. It's really important that, and this is why I really stress that guys need to get their money when they get their money, because it's not as apparent right now, but in a couple of years there's going to be a major discrepancy between what guys are making at the bottom and what guys are making at the top, and there's not going to be a lot of middle ground.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
When you look at these $250, $300 million contracts, those are going to be the star players. And when we're looking at that second apron, which there's a lot of repercussions and a lot of sort of negative punishments towards organizations for getting into that second apron, whether it be them not being allowed to sign buyout players, whether it be them not being able to aggregate salaries in a contract, whether it be not being able to do a whole lot of things that are necessary for a trade. When we're looking at all of that, the way that teams allocate their funds is extremely important right now. And so, I think it's easy collectively as a fan base, for the entirety of the NBA as a holistic, to sort of make a hasty generalization and, condemn organizations for divvying out this much money and, giving an abundance of monetary compensation to a singular player. But, if they really want to hold on to their guys, that's of the utmost importance. And that's why you see so many players, so many talented players, not getting an opportunity in the NBA, having to go overseas, having to go to the G League. And it's also why you see a lot of really talented players. We saw it last offseason. We saw it with Kelly Oubre Jr., guys like Eric Gordon, Christian Wood, not getting any significant free agency offers because the teams just don't have the money to pay them that much money.
Right. Because they're paying the top tier guys exorbitantly.
Right.
It kind of becomes to the haves and the have-nots.
Right. And I don't think there's really a way to ameliorate it or assuage it, and that's becoming an issue because
not anytime real soon.
There's
that's not
a lot of
change.
talent. There's a plethora of talent in the league now, but the guys are getting forced to sign veteran minimums when they should be making a lot more. Their style of play, their performance, just even by the statistical impact by advanced metrics that these guys are putting up, their game warrants a lot more money than they're getting. And I think that's just indicative of where the NBA is transitioning to. And so, these guys that are getting these huge contracts, shout out to them, because they're gonna be the ones that are making a majority of the money on the team. And I think that the reason that Adam Silver sort of implemented these rules and put them into place was so that we sort of transition away from the super team era, where teams like the Golden State Warriors, who had 5 All-Stars on their roster, we're trying to avoid that. There's a lot of parity in the league now. There's a lot of parity. We look at the Western Conference right now; it's stacked.
Oh yeah.
The Nuggets, the Thunder, the Timberwolves, they're all within a game and a half of each other for that number 1 seed. So there's just a lot of parity in the league. So and there's a lot of talent, and it seems that there is a pretty equitable distribution of talent across the league. Of course, there's going to be anomalies, right? We see it with the Boston Celtics. When you're running a lineup of Drew Holiday, Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, a star-studded lineup.
Yeah. But there again, I think some of that goes back to the volume of quality players available now.
Right.
Where since the game has gone so international, the level of talent it's never been to the level that it is now.
It's insane. And it's not just in the NBA. It's at all levels. I mean,
yeah,
you got sixth and seventh graders that are already like that. I mean, they're already like.
You got eighth graders that are that are signing letters of not contracts, but signing to certain colleges when they're in the freaking eighth grade.
Yeah, man, kids are getting D1 offers at like eighth grade.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And there again, you're drawing all the European players. I heard a thing not long ago. South Africa.
Yeah,
they're implementing. They're really pushing basketball now. A lot of the universities, kind of pro teams, or a league in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's exploding everywhere. So the degree of talent and the availability of talent.
Yeah.
You've got guys now that 20 years ago would have been superstars that are now, oh yeah, and he plays too.
Yeah, man.
They're almost that second tier player now, when 25, 30 years ago they would have been the star on the team.
Right, man. And,
because everything is there's so much talent now.
Right. And there's one of these, there's like a narrative going on in the NBA that I want to debunk, just from my perspective. And that's that, players in the G League, players delegate to the G League, that they're not competing with those guys in the NBA, right? It's illogical to say that. I think it's really ignorant. And the reason that I say this, where this is kind of originating from, are guys like Mac McClung. Mac McClung, two-time slam dunk champion. Won it last year, won it this year. An incredible player. Played at Texas Tech University. Texas Tech product. Go Red Raiders.
Another Texas boy.
Yes, sir. Got to support my Texas boys. And shout out Patrick Mahomes. Got that third Super Bowl.
There you go.
Just got to win a couple more, my boy. Match Tom Brady. You know what I'm saying? Basketball is evolving. And I think it's evolving in the right direction. At least at the professional level. I won't speak to other levels because, especially at high school level, AAU circuits, it's getting pretty bad. Whether it be, altercations, violence, a propensity to show blatant and errant disrespect for officials, for coaches, for other teams, for parents.
Yeah.
Because I've been to some tournaments and it's not a bright outlook right now, I would say.
It's embarrassing to the game of basketball.
It is. And it's I don't want to general because it's not all teams, but it's a lot of teams. And I don't put it on the players, unless you're a junior, senior, even sophomore, but even that's pushing it. I put it on the parents and the coaches.
Well, the kids, and I'm sorry if you're still in high school and you're a sophomore, junior, senior, you're still kids. Sorry.
Yeah, but you got more of a moral compass now when you're that developed.
But those kind of behaviors are learned behaviors.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And you're learning it
man.
From other players, what you're being allowed to do from coaches and parents, that makes it very hard for a lot of these kids. And a lot of they're again with so much money in pro sports, not just in basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is, with the amount of money in pro sports, you have parents now just literally almost demanding their child is going to be a pro athlete because they want the bag.
Delusional, man.
Yeah, the parents want the bag more than the kid wants the bag.
And what's crazy is it's not even just club. Like for me personally, I work for I9 Sports as a site coordinator. I was doing running a basketball league this past season, and you even see with 5 and 6 year olds playing I9 Sports, which is not a competitive league. The values that we promote and that we perpetuate, and that are sort of a stamp of our organization are playing youth sports the right way and instilling good moral values, sound moral values within kids at a very young age.
Sportsmanship, leadership, all that good stuff. Yeah, the right stuff.
Right, how the game should be played. And even at that level, parents are wilding, man.
Oh yeah.
They're trying to fight each other. They're trying to fight the coaches. They're arguing with my refs.
Mm-hmm.
Just a blatant disregard for the beautiful game. And I think, overwhelmingly, just a complete disrespect to your kids, man. Because, growing up playing basketball, from my perspective, yes, I dealt with that stuff. Yes, I saw parents acting a fool. Yes, I saw players, playing aggressively, playing dirty. But, I was brought up the right way. Shout out to you. Shout out to Mom.
We tried. We tried very hard.
You brought me up the right way. So now when I play sports, I play with a lot of class. I play with a lot of honor, integrity.
Because if you played the way some of these kids are playing today, we never would have taken you to another game.
Right, and
we wouldn't have allowed you to play.
The positive reinforcement that is present within these tournaments, within these games, within these households is just insane.
Yeah.
Because the parents are enabling it.
Absolutely.
And they're almost encouraging their kids to act this way.
I'll say not just enabling, but they're almost encouraging and facilitating it.
And you have to set an example, right? You have to be a catalyst for a greater passion in your kid's future, revolving around the game. And that's not to say that they should cultivate that greater passion upon the foundation of, aggressiveness, hostility, disrespect, no sportsmanship. It really should be manufactured on the grounds of all of the values, all of the aforementioned values that we talked about.
Yeah,
playing the game the right way.
Because the overwhelming number of youth athletes, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, you name it, soccer, whatever the sport is, the overwhelming number of those students are never going to play past high school.
Right.
And a lot of them won't even play they'll play when they're in elementary school, middle school. A large percentage will never play in high school.
Right, they're not going to play.
So don't get your hopes up that, oh yeah, my kid's going to be the next Tiger Woods or something. No, probably not.
No.
The statistically, they're not going to be the next Michael Jordan, the next Tiger Woods, or whoever. Let them learn to love the game. Play it for what it is, a game, especially when in youth sports. It's a game. Learn to, listen to a coach and have respect and leadership and sportsmanship and all those other things that will help you throughout life. Take those things away from it and quit worrying about, my kid has to have, a scholarship to college, or it's going to be, one and done in college and get that, $50 million, $100 million, $50 million a year contract.
You're looking for that NBA money, man.
Because that's the likelihood of that happening is so small. You might as well, count on, money falling out of the sky in your lap.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you shouldn't encourage your kids, right? You always want to push them to be their best self, push them to continuously improve themselves as a person, because that's my definition of success. That's my definition of victory. It's not beating other people. It's rising above yourself. It should be a me versus me battle. No one's gonna outwork me. No one's gonna outwork myself. No one's gonna outwork I. Me, myself, I. That's all you need.
Absolutely.
Like, focus on yourself. Build up your game. And most importantly, let your game speak for itself. Like, you can talk as much talk as you want. You can beat other people down as much as you want to bring yourself up, to propel yourself to some sort of new stratosphere within your own mind. But at the end of the day,
it's not
rising. It's not elevating you within other people's perceptions, and that's not going to improve other people's appraisals of you.
Well, I mean, sports has always been kind of the ultimate meritocracy.
Right.
Nothing speaks louder than your game.
Yeah, man.
And I said, and regardless of what sport it is, you can go out and trash talk, and I'm the best quarterback in the world or whatever. I can hit more home runs than anybody else, but you got to be able to go out on the field or on the court or whatever and put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly, man.
And if you can't do that, people are going to see through it real fast. Oh yeah, I'm a great shooter, and you're going to go out there and hit, 0 for 20 from 3. Well, yeah, maybe come back when you can make some.
Yeah.
It's like I said, I think sports is the ultimate meritocracy. It doesn't matter where you come from, how much money your family has, what color you are, what city, what country you're from. None of that matters. When you step on the court or on the field, you got to produce.
Yeah.
That's what speaks for you.
And I don't want to say that it doesn't matter in general, because, at the end of the day, you are a product of the situation that you grow up in.
Of course.
You are somewhat resemblant of your environment. And I just want to, make it aware and really bring representation to the different socioeconomic classes that are, involved in basketball. All the people that are really struggling, whether it be their parents are working 2-3 jobs, they're living in a one-parent household.
Yeah.
Basketball is not just an outlet for them. It's not just a game. It's their way out.
Absolutely.
Right. And I really want to shed light on that, because I'm not condemning, that behavior in its entirety. Because, part of me being a man is understanding, where people come from and why sometimes they act the way they do. And, if you grow up in the trenches, you grow up, in the hood, you're growing up with that mentality, it's kill or be killed. And, I'm fortunate that I didn't have to grow up that way, but I've, spent a lot of time with people who have, and heard their stories, and really had deep, meaningful conversations with them about, that journey and how difficult it is to overcome that. And how at times it can seem insurmountable, within your own mind, within your own realm of reality. It can be hard, and I get that. But in my opinion, I think that a lot of this is just exacerbated by social media.
Oh,
Because,
absolutely.
As kids, before you're fully developed, psychologically, you're really sort of drawn to, with an otherworldly magnetism towards what's being presented to you on, like, social media pages, basketball media pages, because that's sort of part of the culture. That's part of the hoop culture that so many kids are involved with now. And if all that's being fed to them, and it's not all that's being fed to them, but if what's being fed to them is portraying, taunting, hazing, putting other players down, a heavy emphasis on winning at all costs, just disrespectful acts, just stuff like that. If that's what's being, depicted to these young kids, they're going to think it's okay.
Yeah,
right? Because
absolutely.
especially as a kid, at the end of the day, you're an observational learner. So when you're observing these things, and, your coaches, your parents, the social media pages that you like to follow, though, those sort of prestigious figures, those prestigious accounts that sort of, hold all your attention and hold merit and hold weight in your heart and your soul, in your mind. When you're sort of drawn towards that, what's being presented to you is going to seem like the way that something should be. So I think that there needs to be some sort of revolutionary transformation on the basis of what we're showing to kids, and sort of the narratives that we're perpetuating. Because at the end of the day, the kids shouldn't be dealing with that. They shouldn't be viewing that. And there's really no way to just completely eradicate it, because at the end of the day, you can't sort of micromanage or compartmentalize your viewership, right? Because it's available to the public, it's available to all.
Absolutely.
But I think that, especially as parents, because it all starts at home, it's just really important to just stress to your kids that, there are certain just codes that need to be upheld when playing basketball.
Well,
right?
and not just basketball.
Well,
I think sports in general.
Life, in sports in general, but this pod is with specificity to basketball.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm talking about basketball.
Yeah.
Like, stuff I've seen just in the past couple of months, like, and I've become a little bit more not necessarily oversaturated with it, but I've become sort of sensorily adapted to it, in the sense that once you're around it enough, you sort of start to become less.
Desensitized to it.
Yeah, you become desensitized to it, but you also become less responsive to it. You're kind of able to just tune it out and just not necessarily pretend like it's not there, but more so transform it into something different. Transduce it into a different form.
Well, you just get to the point where you just don't notice it as much because you see it all the time.
Well, you notice it, but you stop, like, perceiving it as an unbearable thing, and you start perceiving it as the real world.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what I'm honing into, is that if that's all if that's what you're being handed every single day, it's going to start to become natural and organic to you, and that's
and you assume that's the widespread reality.
Yeah, and that's not something that I want for future generations of hoopers, right? I mean, we want them to. Of course, you want to have fun, right? I'm not saying like you can't tease your friends, you can't trash talk a little bit. Like that's all part of the game. That's part of being competitive.
Yeah,
that's part of wanting to elevate yourself, and just facilitate your ascendancy towards the top or whatever your overarching goals are for your career. Like that's how you make it come to fruition, is being continuously motivated to keep pushing for that, right? And that's all made possible, by you.
Yeah.
But I think that my whole thing with the pod is positivity through basketball, right?
Sure.
And I think that when we are positive, when we are making sure that everyone's included, when we're representing different cultures, different backgrounds, on the court, we're all unified under the law of basketball. That's one of my mottos when talking on the pod. And when we take all of that into account, I think that the game still has a very bright outlook, but I think that like all great things, like all great roses, there are thorns.
Sure.
And I think that while we can't necessarily eliminate the thorns and we can't completely decimate them, what we can do is shave them down just a little bit and make them a little bit less painful, a little bit less toxic, a little bit less parasitic.
Yeah.
And just put on for the next generation.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. That's the big thing for me.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, you're never going to get rid of all the thorns.
Right.
Can't do it. Never happen.
Yeah, you can't.
But you can kind of file them down a little bit. You can reduce the number of thorns and kind of how sharp some of those thorns are, and make it a little more livable and bearable for the next generation, as opposed to making it worse for the next generation.
Right. At least minutely alleviated to some degree.
Yeah,
and that's our responsibility.
It absolutely is. Because if this generation is not going to do it, don't count on the next one doing it.
Exactly.
You've got to do it where you can.
Yep.
And like I said, whether it's just, limit those thorns a little bit, make them not quite so sharp, work around those thorns some, and make that next generation coming up where they don't have to deal with some of those same issues at least to the same degree,
right,
that you have to now, and make the sport better.
Right.
Right. That's what you got to look forward to. And I don't think enough, especially young players, they don't have a broad enough kind of long-term view of sports necessarily.
Yeah.
They're worried about, I'm playing today. Well, how are you leaving the game?
Exactly, man.
How are you helping transition this game for the next generation? Are you making it better? Or are you making it worse?
Right.
Not enough players, I think, even serious players. I'm not talking just your recreational players, but your serious high school players and college players. Not enough of them, I don't think, are looking at the long-term effects that they themselves can have on the game.
Right. And that's why we're on this sort of collective and coveted crusade to just continuously, change basketball for the better and just continue to make it a more equitable game, a more accessible game for our younger audiences. And just, I've stated it before, but I think basketball harnesses the ability to really change the world, through positivity, economically speaking, through bringing in a lot of money to cities, and with the organizations in a city, giving back to communities, serving the communities that built them, the communities that support them every single day. And, in wrapping up, I really just want to leave especially the younger hoopers with this message. Don't be subjected to de-individuation when you're with your team. I get it. Mob mentality is a thing. Peer pressure is a thing. You're with your friends. You want to look cool. You want to look like a hot shot. You want to look like, y'all are all part of something. Because, as humans, naturally, we're all longing to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Right. We're longing to feel like we belong. We don't want to be part of that out group. We want to be part of that in group. And I get it. It's a natural human tendency. I'm not going to condemn that whatsoever because I understand that completely. But at the end of the day, just don't lose sight of yourself. Because, when you're on that court, just like when you're at school or when you're at home or when you're at church or wherever you are, you always want to maintain your identity, maintain your moral compass, and just always maintain self-will and self-determination. Because at the end of the day, while you might be part of a team, you're always going to be an individual at heart.
Yeah.
And that means focus on yourself. Take time for yourself. Especially as men, we really got to prioritize our mental health. Take care of ourselves. Take care of your body. Take care of your mind. Everything in moderation, right? But just be a good person, right? and that doesn't mean you can't have fun. That doesn't mean you can't.
As simple as that sounds, it's amazingly hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. But just, and I don't want to say be a good. Try to be just be a good person every single day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like you don't have to change your entire personality, but one of the morals that really stuck with me from my time in Boy Scouts was just do a good turn daily.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that, especially for hoopers, it's really important to give back. I mean, like seriously, man, go volunteer. Go to your local food bank, go volunteer as a team. Do stuff like that. And you don't have to do it all the time, but just find ways off the court to impact your community, to give back, to just, leave a positive mark on the environment that you're enveloped within, that you're immersed within. And just, you don't have to do it all the time, right? I get it.
Right.
There's, games get competitive. I get it, right? But just try your best to leave a positive mark on the game. Yeah. Leave it better than you found it, as you stated.
Absolutely. Because if you don't, who's going to?
Right. And as always...
You can't count on someone else making the game better if you're not willing to help make the game better.
Right. And as always, respect the game.
Absolutely. Words to live by.
Exactly.
Respect the game.
Respect the game. Hey, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the pod. Hey, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, man. I appreciate you. We'll have to tap in another time for sure.
Absolutely. We look forward to it.
Definitely. Hey, still rocking the hat.
Hey, rocking the hat, man.
Just about Hoops merch coming soon.
That's right. Absolutely.
Hey, man. Well,
put your orders in soon.
I think that's all for us. Coming in from San Antonio, I think we're out, right?
We're out.
And I'm going to say, hey, we out.